they didn't have wings that we've all seen in pictures with the outline of feathers. But what they had was like spires of light that came up from the back of their shoulders. And that just glistened all the time and kind of wavered. And the angel came up to me, smiling, and he came up and came to this side of me, and he took my arm. And what a feeling to be touched by an angel. And I noticed when he touched me, light came from his hand onto my shoulder, onto my arm. And then I heard him speak to me. His lips didn't move, but I heard his voice. He said, "Do not be afraid. We are your friends." And then he reached out his arm, and I was hugged by an angel. Hugged by an angel. I cannot describe. It's like being hugged by 100 grandmothers. You just feel the love and the warmth. And he just wanted me to feel safe and secure. And I touched him. And when I drew my hand back, light came from his hand onto mine. It drew back, and then it let go and went back to his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you, the love of God is sticky. The love of God is sticky. I'm willing to bet you've never heard that in church before. It was wonderful. I'm in awe of what's going on. In the meantime, the other two angels glide toward me, and the tallest one, clearly in charge, and they were so polite. They were so polite. The tallest one came in front of me, and he didn't say, "Come this way." He didn't say, "Over here." He said, would you walk with us?" How polite. Would you walk with us? Are you kidding? Of course. I didn't say that, but I was so thrilled. So as we began to walk a path, and ladies and gentlemen, heaven, how's the prayer go? On earth as it is in heaven. You know why? It is just like here, but 1,000 times more beautiful, 1,000 times more thrilling, 1,000 times more light. Let me tell you what heaven looks like. There is no sun. You have this incredible vault of blue sky, a Pennsylvania morning sky. No sun. Light radiates from everything. Light radiates from everything. And again, as I walked, I saw every footprint I made, the grass lit up underneath my feet in a kind of a flash. They were gliding, so they weren't making any footprints. And as I walked along, the flowers are incredible. My grandmother, God bless her, she loved flowers, and the flowers were everywhere along that path and through the trees and in the woods. But the most incredible thing, there were so many of them, it was like you couldn't discern one from the other, but the color was there. And then I stopped, and the angel pointed down, because he knew what I was thinking, and I could see that why I couldn't make out the outline of the flowers. The petals are all translucent. You can see through them like stained glass. And so that creates, you'd have red upon yellow, upon blue, upon green, upon azure, upon topaz. The most incredible mixture of colors. that you could ever possibly imagine. And the light playing through them. You know, the light coming out of them. And the trees gently swaying, the softest of breezes, of warm breezes. Just such a beautiful thing. And I sensed when I heard the rustle of the wind in the trees and in the flowers, it all seemed to join together to form a heavenly music. Not music like anything I'd ever heard, but everything kind of went together. And I mean, like you said, Doug, how do you describe, when you describe something, you try to compare it to something. There's nothing to compare it to. Nothing to compare it to. So I struggled with this, but it was beautiful. But I began to realize, and then one of the angels said to me, listen to the flowers. Isn't that beautiful? Listen to the flowers. And as I did, as he asked me to do that, I realized that the wind and the rustle of the trees and the gentle movement of the flowers all combined to create a harmony of praise. And it was flowing in one direction. And I wasn't told this, but I think it was flowing to the throne of God. Flowing to the throne of God. And even myself, I felt a magnetic pull, sort of at a 75-degree angle. And it was like everything that I was witnessing was moving that way. We walked along, and as I walked, something different was happening. They were talking to me, and I was asking questions. But at the same time, I felt this, and I hate to use this word because it's just too darn modern, but I felt like I was being downloaded with all this information, all this knowledge, and how things looked and worked. And at the same time, we were conversing. I was conversing with the angels. I found out later what that was. So we walked along, and everywhere I looked, and I could see in the distance, you know, more of, I could hear a brook glistening and see a brook glistening. And we came up a gentle slope, and there was a split rail fence. A split rail fence. And the short, I think they gave him to me because he was the shortest angel. And he said, James, look. And I looked, and there was a beautiful pasture. And as I looked, cantering toward me were three of the most beautiful horses I had ever seen. Tossing their heads like horses do when they're happy. And we've been fortunate enough to have Arabian horses in our life and quarter horses, Jim. And I was just so blessed. I think God, to make you feel comfortable, as I said earlier, puts things in front of you in heaven that you loved on earth. He's that kind of a caring, loving, gentle God. And so I was thrilled. And they cantered up to the fence, and two of them started to graze. Didn't see any manure. Thank you, God. One of them put his head over the fence and nuzzled my chest. And I put my hand out and stroked his ears and the side of his neck and scratched him away. And his coat was so perfect. I've never been able to groom a horse like that in my life. And he had light coming out of his coat, just like the angels. And the same thing happened again. That sticky love of God came off the horse and stuck to my hand. And I smoothed them back, and it went back in. And the intelligence of the animals were something. You know that they have a soul. And so I'm so thrilled with this. I'm just overwhelmed with the beauty and the kindness of the angels. And to be able to see something that I loved close by And this overwhelming feeling that I had come home, that I had been wandering all my life, and I had finally come home. Ladies and gentlemen, you have nothing to fear if you walk in the light of Christ. Nothing to fear. What we call earth is a transitory phase, and it means nothing in the sense of where we are eventually going to go. It means a lot in the sense of we are entrusted to care for our loved ones and to live out a life on this earth as best we can. It is the mission that God has given us. But when you're in heaven, you are at home, okay? And it feels like Christmas all wrapped up in 1 hour, you know? And so we're talking, and I can see in the background some beautiful tall Gothic columns, like you'd see in Greece at the Parthenon or something like that. And they shone, and light was coming from them. Light came from everything. And you know, I had this overwhelming feeling that this was all meant to be. I may have felt that I died by accident, but it was God's will. And at that time, I didn't know to what end. As I looked, and the small angel kept speaking with me, small, and then I became aware of another presence. And I turned, and the tall angel with the medallion was standing with his head bowed, his hands out, and he had a book in his hands, a slim book. And standing looking down at the book, in profile to me, but his face covered in shimmer, was the most noble, incredible creature I could ever imagine. And right away, I knew it was Jesus. He had a close-cropped beard, very tall, elegant. He had this, and he radiated a light that, as beautiful as the angels were, it was 1,000 times brighter. But I could look at it. If you looked at something like that here, you couldn't stand it. But I could see the light coming from it. His hair wasn't long. It was longish, but it kind of curled over the back of his collar. And the angel, I think, felt and I started to get weak in my knees. And I remember kind of doing this, and the angels reached and held me up. Then one of the angels brought my attention back and said, "Look." And I looked across that pasture, and there was another fence on the far side, up the hill. And I could see 3 horses up there. And it was a white and a gray and a bay.